All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with Canada Hoops. Excited to welcome back our great friend Oren Weisfeld. Oren has joined us in the past, but he has an exciting book that many of you probably know about coming out next week. It's called The Golden Generation: How Canada Became a Basketball Powerhouse. Oren, excited to have you back, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, man, been looking forward to doing this interview for sure. I think you're one of the first people that got to read the book, so excited to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, I got a bunch of pages, copy manuscript. I don't know if we call it that, printed off, but yeah, it was awesome to get a hold of this, Oren, and glad that I had that opportunity. Very thankful, and it's like I'll just give you love right away, man. It's a great read. It's well put together. I think those of us that understand the history to a degree of Canada basketball, basketball in this country, can really appreciate the stories inside the book. Just off the hop, man, how excited are you for it to finally come out? Everyone to read it, to get their hands on it, and just understand the work and the time and the effort that you put into this, man. You must be fired up.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Like it's my first book, so I'm not used to this process of writing something and, handing in drafts. And my first draft was probably due almost a year ago, and it takes that long before you actually start to see printed copies in people's hands. So the delayed gratification with a book is quite something. You have to really be patient with it before people actually start to read it and give you their opinions on it. So I'm mostly just excited, like I said, for people to get their hands on it, share their opinions. I'm curious to hear what people think, and just obviously part of it too is educating people, and hopefully the next generation will have a bit more of an appreciation for the people that came before them too.
What has some of the feedback been? Like, obviously, I love it. I mean, no question. I'm not just saying that because we're talking about it. And I think if you care about Canada basketball and basketball in Canada, um, I think people will love it. Like, what's the feedback been from other people so far that have read it?
Yeah, it's honestly only a handful of people, but
Okay.
so far so good. So far so good. Yeah, I'm happy. I think people are definitely entertained by it, and that's a big thing that they've been able to just keep reading and be hooked into the story and just keep them in it. I think that's a big one, and yeah, I've also got some questions, about the timing of it, the golden generation title, all those things that maybe we'll get into,
Yeah.
more on the, critical lens. But it's an interesting time. I mean, Canada didn't do as well as we hoped at the 24 Olympics, and they didn't medal. So obviously, there are some questions about that. Would it have been better 4 years from now in the 2028 Olympics? Those are definitely questions that I think about sometimes. But I think everything definitely worked out the way it was supposed to, and I'm happy that we have this and these next 4 years to kind of ponder some of these storylines going into what could be, the moment we've kind of all been waiting for at the Olympics then.
Well, maybe if I can, I'll counter that in terms of, like, I think the title, and obviously the concept is fitting because, okay, the program, the senior men's national team finally got to the Olympics in Paris last year, didn't medal, but then we turn around and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is the NBA MVP, Finals MVP,
Mhm.
um, the best player in the world, and he's off to a torrid start again this year. So, I mean, the golden generation idea, to me, it works. It fits. It's very accurate, and he's one of the many players that help put that concept into play, right? So, and you're right. Like 4 years from now, what will be the storylines um, after LA 2028, or even the next World Cup, where then we lead into a second book by you possibly. Like I think I think if
Yeah.
people were to question maybe the title and that idea, I think the points are very valid that this is the golden generation. We don't have to wait another 4 years, in my opinion, right? I think it's accurate, or
Yeah. I think a lot of the questions are answered in the book with that stuff, but yeah, maybe 4 years from now, there'll be a new edition if they do metal.
right?
In terms of the name, the golden generation, like, I found it interesting that people have been using that title since, like, the 2000 Olympics, right? And the Nash, Barrett, Hamilton, that led team that placed 7th at the Olympics, beat Yugoslavia. I thought it was, like, interesting that people started using the title all the way back then, assuming that this would kinda be, like, the standard going forward and that this would be the first golden generation and that it would only be upwards from there, and it kinda turned out to be a false title, at least when it came to the national team. So even though it has been used before and there's actually nothing golden about it quite yet,
Yeah,
um, like you said, it is fitting in the sense that sometimes we take some of the accomplishments for granted, like winning a bronze medal at a World Cup, qualifying for the Olympics, Shea winning MVP, Shea and Lou winning a championship last season. All these things are basically symbolize that the generation of Canadians we have in the NBA right now are the best that have ever come. And so in that sense, it's the golden generation.
no, I agree, and I think like the world has definitely taken notice, right? And I think the book um, reflects that. And if you look at other, you know, documentaries, Starting Five season 2 on Netflix, Shea was one of the key guys, and they're
Mhm.
running, they're highlighting like just the fact like his roots and being Canadian. You see Lou on there, so no, it's a great. I think it's a great and accurate title and idea that this is the golden generation, despite maybe lack of success for the national team per se, but our group and culmination of players is it's the best it's ever been. Just
Mhm.
I guess, Oren, like the book was probably an idea for a long time. Just what really kickstarted it to say this is what I want to do, and it's obviously a passion of yours, but and you're a wealth of information. But what really got you going to make this project, come to life?
Yeah, I guess there was 2 moments. One was I went to Victoria, BC in 2021 to cover the national team at the Olympic qualifying tournament. That was when
Okay.
they lost to the Czech Republic in a overtime thriller. And that's when I really knew that I wanted to start covering the national team just because I saw a different level of basketball when it came to the international game. It's different. It's a little bit slower than the NBA. It's different paced. It's more of a team game, and it's also a different level of passion than the NBA. And seeing that up close and personal, being around those guys, it was important for me to realize that that's who I wanted to cover going forward. And then what happened was, sitting in, at the time, my basement apartment watching Canada beat Spain at the 2023 World Cup.
Yeah.
Just a very emotional moment for all of us. Came back
Yeah.
from down 12 to beat Spain, the number 1 team in the world at the time, and booked their ticket to the first Olympic Games in 24 years. Like, I knew that was a story. I always knew that was a story, that when they qualified for the Olympics again for the first time in 24 years, people would wanna know, how did they get here and why did it take so long? So once that happened and once they beat Spain behind obviously a historic performance from Shea, that's when the idea for a book really started to turn in my head, and that's when around the time I started to pitch it.
Did it take long to get accepted? Like I'm not obviously in the know on sort of publishers, but was it something like your idea and your concept? Was it easy for a publisher to pick up, or did you have to really kind of put a lot of feelers out there?
No, it was a long process, and like I pitched it to many publishers. Only one um, gave me an offer.
Okay.
A couple others were interested but wanted to change some things around. whether it was the perspective that I highlighted a bit more of the NBA side of things or stuff like that. But ECW, the publisher that I went with, really believed in the project the way I saw it, and that was kind of more from a grassroots perspective, and from kind of interweaving these different narratives of what happened at the grassroots level, what happened with Canada basketball, and then the stories of the players. One of my favorite books in general is Dream Team by Jack McCullough, and that's a book about the 1992 USA Dream Team. And it goes back and forth. The way it's laid out is it goes back and forth between like moments in the Dream Team's rise at the Barcelona Olympics and the backstories of these guys like Bird and Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan and so on. So that was an inspiration in terms of how I wanted to lay out the book. And I did take a lot of inspiration from that in terms of going back and forth between the players and then the games. But yeah, the long story short, pitched it a lot of places. Only one really believed in it. And we've been rocking with them ever since.
Awesome, man. That's good to hear. I mean, you had an idea that you wanted to stay true to, and they've jumped on board with that. So that's great to hear. What
Mhm.
like just how satisfying was the process, Oren? Like just it takes a lot of time. You have to be diligent. People will see in the book, you know, uh, you credit like where you get a lot of information and research. There's a lot of time and energy that goes into that. Like just now that it's going to hit everybody's hands next week on, I think it's November 4th, right? We'll plug that November
Yeah.
4th. Um, like you ready? Everyone, some people have read it. Just how, like overall, how satisfied are you with like the whole process and just it coming together, man?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I learned a lot.
Nice.
And when I wrote the book, I would say, and I believe this, and I don't know if everyone does, but I'm of the belief that like I do projects that, um, in this case, this was the book I wanted to read growing up, and it didn't exist. And a lot of the stories that I found and started reporting on were things that were really not exposed in Canadian media for a number of reasons. The biggest one being just a lack of resources that goes into a sport like basketball. Historically speaking, now it's picking up for sure, but historically speaking, like the media donated their resources to hockey and baseball, and that's pretty much, curling would get a little bit more shine than hockey.
Yeah.
And so when I wanted to learn about these things and I would Google them or look for books on them, there just wasn't a lot of literature about the Canadian national team, about some of these players that were trailblazers for Canadian hoops, like a Jamal McGlure or um, whoever you might say. So it was the book that I wanted to read in terms of how all these things fit together. And so it was definitely rewarding to be able to actually talk to all these people that I uh, I looked up to in a way, and who I was curious about in a different way, and who I heard all these rumors about, but I wanted to get it from the horse's mouth also,
Right.
and to be able to actually talk to them and interview them and put it together in the way that I thought would be entertaining for all sorts of readers, not just like the extremely nerdy basketball fans. Yeah, it's rewarding for sure.
Was there like an interview or time spent with someone who kind of really blew you away? Like you were just really surprised, maybe with their stories, their time, just them as a character. And when I asked that, I just want to let everyone know, like,
Mhm.
the split, and not the split in the book, but the idea like there's national team concepts and the history of the program, success, failure, and then there's chapters dedicated more or less to specific players, right, through the history of the program. So I think no matter who's reading this book, people are going to love that. Like you said, there's highlights of specific players. So if a reader like loves Jamal Murray, well, there's Jamal Murray content. But yeah, is there maybe sit downs with someone that really surprised you, just not what you expected in a great way, where you came out of that like, wow, that was
Mhm.
a great time spent with this person. Anybody stand out?
Yeah, for sure. Like, first I'll say, when I started pitching the book, it was really gonna be a Canada basketball book.
Right,
But what happened was I started to do research and I started to do interviews, and I realized that telling the story of Canada basketball would kind of be doing an injustice to Canadian basketball
right,
because it's ultimately a part, but no more than one part of an equation that is really been grown from the grassroots level and often in spite of the government and corporations who have not been willing to invest in these people who grow up in inner city communities without a ton of money but do it themselves by dedicating the hours, by finding places to play, and by helping raise and develop kids to eventually made it to the NBA and the national team and so on. So I ended up really altering what the book was about dramatically from my original plan, which was really just Canada basketball focus, to a much broader perspective, kind of told through a lot of the grassroots programming and the developments on those sides. So what comes to my mind when I think about like a surprising interview or something that really made me like shake my head is the amount of different perspectives I would get even on a single day. So one day I drove to the Canada basketball offices, which is in the West End, and I spoke to Michael Meeks for about 2 hours about his upbringing, playing at the 2000 Olympics with Nash, getting cut with Nash before that. Great stories. His perspective on the national team and the role it's played. Um, and now, obviously, his work, what he does now, is running the boys programming for Canada basketball.
yeah,
And I went straight from that interview to another one with Cordell Llewellyn, who was a really good player in the 90s. Him and his brother, both good players, West End, Toronto guys, got cut from the national team in 94 and felt that race played a role in his him getting cut. And I go into the role racism has played in the national team in the 80s and 90s pretty deeply in 2 chapters of the book, so people can learn more about that then. But just going from one interview to another where people had such different perspectives on Canada basketball and how we got here in terms of Canadian basketball, um, that would definitely rattle me at times, and I would have to consider like, how do I frame this when people have such different perspectives? And ultimately, I think what you do is you talk to as many people as possible. You get as many voices in the book as possible so that you are hearing different perspectives and the reader can kind of make up for their own mind what they take away from it. But also having to have a bullshit detector to some extent and going with my own gut too in terms of what I think needs to be in there and what doesn't.
yeah. I wanted to just say, like, that those situations. It's like, how do you deem what's accurate? So if one person's story is different from another's, like, who do you kind of think
Yeah.
is more accurate than another, right? So, because I've seen that just in conversations on the podcast with people now going back. Like, I think we've been doing this 5 years now, in different conversations, and one guest will remember a situation or moments or other people differently from others, right? So, they tell the story. I just chat with them, but it's not my job to differentiate what's true or not. But yeah, I could see that being sort of difficult, and I guess you would have to take that route where you just put as many opinions in the book as possible, right? And does was when the race thing started to come up, because I think we've talked about that before. I think the first time you were on the podcast, like, did it start to get difficult in terms of some of those conversations, like, not like a little uncomfortable? Because I know, and people will read it in the book, obviously, and I don't want to say too much, but um, because it's highlighted really well. Like, was that a touchy thing for a lot of people, just because if players felt like they didn't make team because of that um, being an
Yeah.
issue? Like, was that difficult?
It's a very touchy subject, definitely the most challenging subjects of the book. I'm very honored and appreciative of the players who did choose to speak to me about it because it is such a
Right.
emotional subject, and I'm also a white guy writing about a predominantly black sport, and so for them to trust me with that, I appreciate. Um, what was I going to say on that? Can you remind me the question?
Well, just in terms of like that, the idea of like racial divide, I guess, starts to come up
Right,
as you're talking to everyone and getting the stories. Like
right.
how,
So it's a complicated subject for the
yeah,
reason that anyone could get cut from a team and give any excuse as to why they got cut, right? If one person gets cut from a team and they blame it on race, then okay, maybe that person's being a sour grape. But when 10, 15 players talk to you on the record about being cut from a team, showing systemic issues that affected black players more than white players, and then also um telling you actual stories of things that happened to them that were explicitly racist, not just implicit.
right.
That's when I felt like, okay, I'm comfortable writing about this and saying that this is racism, with my own voice. So that's what happened is once I talked to enough people about it and heard recurring themes, that's when I was kind of comfortable writing what I did write, which is that black people had to work twice as hard to get half as far on the national team for many, many years.
Yeah, and I think you kind of touched on like it almost tied into like a regional divide at that
Mhm.
time in the program too, where
For sure.
it seemed like maybe players from the GTA area or other urban areas weren't getting opportunities, and a lot of players were kind of represented um, from the West Coast, basically because maybe they were playing at a certain school or the coaches represented the school. So yeah, it's an important part of the book, no question. I'm excited for people to read that part to get a better understanding of maybe just how far the program has really come too, because now it appears to not be an issue at all, and there's no denying that really the program is just um, embracing everyone, and no matter where you're from and um, who you represent, you get an opportunity with the team right at any level really. So I think the program's done a good job of that. Um, did like how difficult was it to like try to include as many stories or certain players as possible, like without feeling like you
Mhm.
left anyone out? Because when people go through the book and they read
Yeah.
it, and again, I'm super excited for everyone to go through this because I feel like anyone that really to a degree made a big impact on basketball in Canada, whether it's grassroots or Canada basketball or pro level stuff, is fairly represented. But like, were you ever stressed where you're like, man, like I didn't get an opportunity to speak with this person or
Yeah.
highlight their contribution? Was that like a concern?
No, for sure. I mean, I'm still getting calls to this day, players who are saying, "How come you didn't talk to me for the book?"
Right.
And I think it's fair. Like, like you said, I think I included the vast majority of people, even if I didn't interview them myself. I included their voices in the book who are important to Canadian basketball. But there were a lot of times where I had to cut out voices because you want to do like two things. You do want to tell accurate history of Canadian basketball, but you also want to do it in a way that is easy enough to ingest and entertaining. And if I wrote a 500 page, academic paper on this subject, sure, it might be a little bit more like a bit more data and information might be in there, but way less people would read it, right? Because that's constantly the weight you're doing in your head, right? Is how much do I want to put in here versus how many people do I actually want to read this book? And it's not for like sales, it's for like how many people can we help like get a little bit more knowledge about the history here and the infrastructure here and the people that came before them. So that was constantly a thing that I was weighing in my head, and I had to cut a ton of great stories, great FIBA stories, great stuff, especially in like the 80s and 90s, which I just didn't have time to get into. I felt bad for not being able to kind of tell the whole. I think it's a very Toronto centric book. It's a very Ontario centric and BC centric book.
Hmm.
But like Quebec was originally going to be a chapter just because amazing things are happening in Quebec. And I'm actually writing about it right now for a different story because it just didn't end up fitting into the narrative that the book told. In part because like not a lot of Quebec players have been on the national team other than like Joel Anthony, D'Alembert, and now there's a couple, but prior to now, it really hasn't had a lot of representation on the national team. So it was hard to fit into the narrative. But yeah, because of that, it was a lot of people that I had to cut.
Yeah, like when people see this, and it's almost like you get almost giddy when you realize, like, holy smokes, people are well versed in like who's playing, say, in the NBA from Canada, but the the success of some of these individual players just really almost, as I'm reading the book, or like kind of push the book along. Like, so, like, did you feel kind of fortunate that, like, okay, you get the idea of the book, the World Cup success in 2023, like, holy smokes, there's more content, and then we get the rise of SGA, Dylan the villain, like it's, um,
Yeah,
did you feel like some of the book started to push itself along just because of the individual players as well?
for sure. Like I'm not someone to toot my own horn, and a
You can
lot
do
of
it here.
this,
You can do it here.
a lot of this was like straight dumb luck. Like when I was
Right.
watching the finals last season, and I saw 4 Canadians starting in the final games,
Yeah.
for the first time, it's like, wow, like this is great timing for this book.
Yeah.
So it was super lucky for sure. And the Olympic coverage that those guys got, and Shea having the season he had last year. So it was crazy luck. At the same time, I definitely like will say I saw this coming. Like
Yeah.
I I've been paying very close attention and knew that, and like there's a reason I wanted to write this book is like I knew what was about to happen and I wanted it to be out when it was happening. So I think anyone paying super close attention was seeing each year a couple more Canadians going in the draft, each year a couple more all-star Canadians. And you if you knew the stories of the guys like Shea and Jamal, Andrew Nemhard, RJ Barrett, you just knew that these guys aren't going to be like 2-year NBA players and go to Europe. Like they're hard workers. They're really have all the qualities they need to succeed. So to some extent, I would say I saw it coming, and that was part of the reason I wanted to write the book when I did.
What, as let's just maybe look at, say, the NBA season is just getting going. Some guys are having monster games already. Canadian players, I mean. Um, is there something you're looking forward to watching from any of these guys this year? Just I know we're not a little away from the book, but just because they're a big part of the book. Anything you're keen on this season as we get going in the NBA for our Canadian guys?
Yeah, for sure. Lots of things. I mean, the 27 World Cup, 28 Olympics are, I really think, Canada's best chance to win an Olympic medal, maybe ever. You just never know how long Shea is going to play for the national team. He just had a quote in GQ about how he might not play that long. And you also just don't know when the next superstar is going to come along. So this Olympics is huge. And with that in mind, I'm watching a lot of the Canadians. RJ is off to a really good start
Yeah,
in his season. I'm liking what I'm seeing there. Andrew Nemhard is going to get the chance to run a team, which I'm really excited about with Tyrese Halliburton out. I think he can do it. I think he might win Most Improved Player, and I think he'll probably start in the backcourt beside Shea at the next most important tournaments. And then lastly, Zach Edey is a huge wild card for this team, but also kind of a guy they really need to stay healthy and develop over the next couple of years. So those are a few guys I'm going to be watching for this season.
yeah. You mentioned everybody. I think that comes to mind for me as
Keyshawn
well.
George off to a
Oh
good
yeah,
start too. Yeah.
Yeah, and we were all excited about him, like in the America Cup, right? And just kind of getting glimpses of his game and maybe how he fits into the FIVA game and a Canada basketball senior men's national team, and then he's off to a great start, and
Mhm.
seemed like his time in the summer in that tournament benefited him. I think people, Shaden Sharp is another guy like Portland's expecting big things from him, and
Right.
um, one more question with all the interviews and sit downs. Did any any of the women's side come up in conversations? Like I've just we obviously cover the senior women's national team here on the podcast. Did anything kind of cross over, maybe in terms of like when program was struggling with money or just other concepts too?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely came up, and originally too, when I thought the book would be about Canada basketball, it was also going to be about the women and go back and forth between the women and men. But it
Right.
was one of those things where I realized I just didn't have space to do both and to do both the right way. And plus, with the book, I think 2028 is more of a realistic timeline for the women to have real success, as you saw in 23 and 24. They didn't have as much success on the international stage. They're going through a transition period right now, that program. But there's so many young women coming up the pipeline that I think that book, whether it's I do it or someone who's better suited to do it, does it. I hope someone does. I do think that book is more, 3, 4, 5 years from now when that program and just women's basketball in Canada is peaking. Part of the reason it hasn't is because they haven't gotten the same resources that the men have gotten, both uh, from a corporate level, from a government level, and at Canada basketball. Like I remember Letitia Emma here telling me how even up to like 3, 4 years ago, they weren't getting like the backpacks that the men were getting at training camp. So all of this is changing very rapidly, and they are starting to catch up when it comes to some of the investment into the women's game. But because it's lagged behind so far historically, um, yeah, it didn't feel to me like the right time to really write that book.
Yeah, I know. Like conversations we've had here. It's an important part of the history of the program, no question. So I was just curious with the many conversations you had, if that was something that had popped up too, um, as well. Oren, man, anything else you want to highlight before I get you out of here? And everyone, please pick up a copy of the book. I think everyone's really gonna like it. So well done. If you're a Canada basketball fan, nerd, it's a must-have to add to your collection. Any shout-outs, people you want to thank, Oren?
Well, I'll first just say to the listeners, yeah, November 4th, it officially comes out. You can order it now, Amazon, Indigo, your local bookstore, wherever you get your books. It's just 25 bucks. If you are not a big fan, maybe someone in your family, a friend, holiday gift is coming up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really kind of explores the history of men's basketball in Canada, going back from the 90s to now, over 100 interviews. And I think people will definitely gain a better appreciation for some of our players and also for some of the people that came before them to lay the groundwork for what we now have, which is, a record number of players, an MVP and a national team that's really good, all this stuff. So this is how it looks. Golden generation,
Beautiful.
kingmakers.
Beautiful.
And no, just obviously appreciative to all the people that shared their stories with me first and foremost. And yeah, gonna be on the media circuit, but appreciate you for this one. It's about my first one, and it's fun. It's fun getting to talk a little bit about the book.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I know, like, I've always appreciated your work and your insight, and sticking more to the national team stuff. And I always look forward to anything you talk about in your work. So happy to do this. I'm glad we could connect. And yeah, everyone, please grab the book. I think it's a must, and it'll definitely. The cover is beautiful, man. I really like the cover, like just super like cool, man. Just really nice. Yeah, it
Yeah, thank you.
looks good.
My friend Moya is an illustrator. I went to middle school and high school with him, and
Nice.
he hooked it up for sure. We definitely, I was pretty hands-on with some of my ideas there, but he's a great illustrator and he put it together.
I love it, man. Well, thank you, Oren. We really appreciate it. And I know we're going to talk soon again, man.
Yeah, man. No, thank you for everything you do for Canadian basketball as well. Very much appreciated. And yeah, I'll see you around soon.
You betcha. That wraps up another episode of Canada Hoops. I want to thank Oren Weisfeld for pulling up. Remember to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Check out The Golden Generation, how Canada became a basketball powerhouse. And we will see you on the next episode.